By 1905, San Francisco was the eighth largest city in the United States, an economic powerhouse built on railroad and mining wealth. Residents were accustomed to minor seismic tremors, dismissing them as a harmless quirk of West Coast life, while rapidly expanding their Gilded Age metropolis. To accommodate this rapid growth, developers dumped sand, dirt, and municipal debris into old lagoons and marshes. They built massive, heavy brick and stone structures directly on top of this loosely packed sediment, a precarious surface geologists call made ground. Fire Chief Dennis T. Sullivan recognized the danger. He warned that the city's rigid clay water mains would easily shatter during a severe tremor. He repeatedly petitioned the city for an independent saltwater auxiliary system and fireboats to pump directly from the bay, but municipal authorities denied every request. San Francisco prioritized rapid capital expansion over geological reality. The infrastructure of the Pacific Coast Financial Center was left entirely defenseless against the inevitable tectonic forces sleeping beneath it. At 5:12 a.m. on Wednesday, April 18, 1906, a violent foreshock ripped through the cold, foggy streets, shattering the silence of the early morning. 20 seconds later, the primary tectonic event struck. The boundary between the Pacific and North American plates slipped, and a massive rupture tore open along 296 miles of the San Andreas Fault. For 48 seconds, the Earth shook violently. In areas built on made ground, the rapid oscillations increased pore water pressure in the sediment. The soil lost all shear strength and liquefied. Heavy structures, like the Valencia Street Hotel, sank directly into the mud as the earth opened up beneath them. The tremor delivered a precise double blow to the city's defenses. A collapsing hotel chimney crashed through a neighboring firehouse, mortally wounded Chief Sullivan. Below the streets, the rigid clay water mains he had warned about snapped completely. The seismic shockwave systematically eliminated the city's leadership and its primary firefighting infrastructure. The true catastrophe was still to come. With homes battered by the quake, residents began their morning routines. On Hay Street, a woman attempting to cook breakfast ignited her stove, unaware her chimney flue was fractured. The wall caught fire, sparking the notorious ham and eggs blaze. Similar domestic accidents broke out across the city. Firefighters arrived at the scenes, only to find their hoses completely dry. Deprived of water, civil and military authorities attempted to create physical fire breaks by demolishing buildings in the path of the flames. This animation illustrates the critical error in their demolition strategy. Safely leveling a structure requires the downward concussive force of high-explosive dynamite. Instead, the military supplied barrels of low-explosive black powder, which combusts and scatters burning debris outward. Compounding this chemical error, the city's foremost civilian explosives expert was reportedly intoxicated and dismissed from service. Untrained crews continued detonating black powder, blowing burning embers directly into adjacent neighborhoods. This tactic actively ignited dozens of new fires across Chinatown and North Beach. Over 4,000 military personnel flooded the streets. Operating under martial law conditions, soldiers patrolled the ruins and commandeered civilians for work details while the haphazard demolitions continued. Bereft of water and experienced command, the authorities weaponized the initial disaster. Their attempts to save the city accelerated destruction, feeding a manageable crisis into a massive inferno. The isolated fires merged into a single firestorm, reaching temperatures of 2,700 degrees Fahrenheit. A wall of smoke towered a mile into the sky as tens of thousands of residents fled down Market Street, abandoning their neighborhoods. Over 200,000 people fled to the surrounding hills and parks. Nob Hill elites and working-class laborers sat side by side on the grass, watching as 3 days of relentless fire consumed their shared metropolis. As the flames approached, word spread among property owners that insurance companies would not pay out for structures damaged by the earthquake, but they would cover fire damage. Desperate residents intentionally set their own ruined, unburned homes ablaze. The massive ruin forced citizens into acts of deliberate self-sabotage to secure their financial survival. This grassroots arson was the first step in an organized cover-up that would soon rewrite the city's official history. By the time the fires burned out, over 3,000 people were dead, 250,000 residents were left completely homeless, living in rows of military tents in segregated refugee camps. 500 city blocks lay in ashes. The monuments of wealth on Nob Hill were reduced to hollowed-out stone shells, stripped of their opulent interiors. The civic administration had no home left. The majestic bronze dome of City Hall crashed to the ground, leaving only a skeletal metal frame towering over the rubble. The physical devastation was nearly total, placing the city's financial elite in an immediate existential crisis. Admitting the true geological cause of the destruction would bankrupt San Francisco and permanently drive Eastern capital away. While the ruins were still smoldering, the San Francisco Real Estate Board convened to control the narrative. On April 24th, they passed a resolution dictating that the disaster must officially be referred to as the Great Fire. The word earthquake was strictly forbidden entirely. Looking at a standard 1906 insurance policy explains this calculated lie. These contracts covered fire but explicitly excluded seismic damage. Worse, they contained a fallen building clause, meaning if a structure collapsed from a tremor before catching fire, all insurance coverage immediately ceased. If the catastrophe was accurately attributed to the tectonic rupture, insurers would escape liability, and the city could not afford to rebuild. By systematically maintaining that the earthquake caused only minor structural damage and blaming the total ruin on the subsequent fires, property owners successfully demanded full payouts, collecting nearly 90% of their policy's face value. Armed with this insurance capital, San Francisco rebuilt quickly. But civic leaders ignored the geological realities they had just survived, laying the exact same grid of streets over the exact same unstable topography, burying the history of the rupture deep beneath the new pavement. The 1906 disaster was triggered by a shifting fault line and multiplied by human incompetence, but its official history was authored by disaster capitalism. The endured legacy of the catastrophe shows that economic survival, rather than nature, dictates how a tragedy is recorded.